The Forrester estate had never been so still. Rows of white chairs gleamed under the soft California light. Flowers lined the aisle, and guests, family, executives, the press, waited for the moment that had been promised for weeks. The wedding of Thomas Forrester and Hope Logan. A union long fought for, long resisted, now poised on the edge of becoming reality. But as the music swelled and Carter Walton stood waiting, ring in hand, everything unraveled in less than a minute. Douglas Forrester, the quiet center of so much chaos over the years, stood frozen in place. The boy's eyes brimmed with tears as he looked from Hope to Thomas. Then back to the sea of expectant faces. And then he cracked. His voice trembled, his breath hitched, and he pointed straight at the man everyone had come to celebrate. "I saw them," he whispered. "At the office. Thomas and Mommy, they were kissing." The silence was immediate, violent, heavy. The guests didn't react at first, couldn't. Carter's hand dropped. Brooke gasped. Ridge's face twisted in confusion. Hope's eyes widened, her lips parted, but no sound came. Thomas didn't move. His body turned to stone. It was Douglas, the child both bride and groom had sworn to protect, who had set the entire stage on fire. Carter was the first to speak, not loudly but clearly. He looked from Thomas to Hope, then at the minister, and finally tossed the ring back into its box. "This wedding is over," he said, voice flat, expression unreadable. "I'm not marrying anyone today." And he walked off the altar without another word. The room erupted. Whispers surged like waves. Brooke lunged toward Hope, shielding her daughter from the oncoming storm with every ounce of motherly instinct. "She didn't mean to," Brooke cried out. She was confused. Thomas manipulated her, but the defense sounded hollow even to her own ears. Ridge didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His eyes did all the talking. Eyes that had once fought for Thomas, excused him, defended every slip, every obsession, now filled with betrayal and bone-deep disappointment. He didn't approach his son, didn't raise his voice, just stared, shaking his head, stepping back as if distance could undo the shame flooding the room. Reporters started texting. Cameras not officially allowed were suddenly rolling again. Within minutes, the story hit fashion blogs, then the tabloids. Forrester wedding meltdown, Logan Forrester affair exposed by child. Headlines screamed. Images leaked. What was meant to be a declaration of legacy love became a global scandal. The most humiliating public implosion in the history of Forrester creations. Thomas tried to speak. It wasn't what it looked like, he mumbled, stepping toward Hope, who still hadn't moved. "It just happened. We didn't mean for it to go that far." But no one was listening anymore. Liam was already there, hand on Hope's arm, pulling gently, trying to lead her away. "Come on," he said, jaw tight. "Let's go. You don't owe anyone anything here." His voice was firm, but his grip was gentler than expected. Hope turned to look at him. The father of her child. Her former husband. The man who had always hovered just at the edge of her chaos. His eyes were pleading. But she didn't move. She didn't follow Liam. She didn't run to Thomas either. She stood rooted to the spot, her breath shallow, her skin cold. What Douglas had said, the kiss, the moment in the office, it was real. She remembered it vividly. Not just the kiss but the stillness afterward. The way her heart hadn't screamed, no. The way her body hadn't recoiled. The way part of her had felt something. That scared her more than the scandal. Liam, growing more frustrated by the second, leaned in closer. "Hope, this isn't you. You didn't mean for this to happen. He pressured you. You don't even love him, not really." "But didn't she?" The question hit her like a slap. It echoed louder than the chaos around her. Thomas had been manipulative, obsessive, even dangerous at times. But lately, he had changed. Or so she'd believed. The kiss hadn't come from desperation. It hadn't been one-sided. It had been slow, mutual, electric. And it hadn't left her mind since. That kiss was now unraveling her entire life. Meanwhile, across the room, Ridge was tearing into Thomas. Not publicly, not with yelling, but in a low, sharp tone only a father could deliver. "You told me you were ready. You told me you were done chasing ghosts. And now this? With Hope? Again?" Thomas, eyes reddening, shook his head. "It wasn't planned. I swear. It just happened. I love her. I always have." Ridge stepped back. "That's not love. That's addiction. And you just dragged Douglas into it." Again, Brooke, still clinging to Hope, glared at Thomas from over her daughter's shoulder. "You used her. You knew what you were doing. You destroyed this entire family, again." Eric Forrester tried to mediate, his voice shaky. "Everyone. This isn't the place." But his voice was drowned out by shouting. Accusations. Reporters closing in. Guests exiting in droves. The wedding had become a battlefield. And in the eye of the storm, Hope stood still, trapped between two men and 1,000 consequences. Later, In the back garden, far from the flashing cameras and raised voices, Liam confronted Hope again. You kissed him. Fine. But why? Was it pressure? Was it confusion? Or are you seriously trying to tell me that after everything he did to you, everything we've been through, you still want him? Hope didn't answer. Not at first. Then she whispered, I don't know what I want anymore. And that was the truth. The kiss had stirred something she couldn't explain. Not lust, not nostalgia. Something deeper. Something terrifying. Thomas had always been a forbidden thought in the back of her mind, the one she kept buried. But now that it was out in the open, she couldn't ignore it. She couldn't pretend it didn't mean something. Liam stepped back. If you're even thinking about going down that road again, you're not the woman I thought you were. And I can't protect you from what's coming. She watched him leave. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Fashion sites published timelines of the affair. Videos of Douglas's confession were leaked anonymously. The Forrester brand took a hit overnight. Stock prices dipped. Board members called emergency meetings. Ridge issued a terse public statement, but the damage was done. Internally, the family was splintered. Carter refused to speak to Thomas. Brooke demanded Hope leave town for a while. Eric blamed himself. And Thomas? He disappeared. For days, no one heard from him. Rumors swirled that he was back in therapy. Others said he left the country. But the truth was darker. He stayed in LA, isolated, tormented by what he had destroyed, and by the single moment that still haunted him. Hope's kiss. Not the chaos after. Just that kiss. Meanwhile, Hope found herself alone, truly alone, for the first time in years. No Liam. No Thomas. No Brooke breathing down her neck. Just silence. And in that silence, she began to question everything. Not just the kiss. Not just her heart, but her entire identity. Was she the victim? Or the architect? One night, unable to sleep, she went back to the Forrester office, the place where it all happened. She stood in the same spot where Thomas had touched her face, where their lips had met. She closed her eyes. And when she opened them, Thomas was standing in the doorway. Neither spoke. They just stared. Then he said, I shouldn't have kissed you. She nodded. But I let you. That was the moment everything changed. No apologies. No justifications. Just truth. Whatever happens next, there is no going back. The silence after the wedding scandal didn't last long. It never did in the world of the Forresters. The aftermath had barely settled when another shockwave hit. Not a headline. Not a press leak. But something far worse. Douglas Forrester, the little boy at the center of it all, vanished. It started with a note. Left on his bed in quiet, childlike scrawl were just a few words, I'm sorry. I just wanted the grown-ups to tell the truth. By the time Hope found it, Douglas was already gone. The entire house descended into panic. Brooke blamed Thomas. Thomas blamed himself. Hope was inconsolable. Calls were made. Messages went unanswered. His phone was off. The security team began tracking, while Ridge and Steffi started scouring Douglas's favorite haunts. But it was Thomas who first figured it out. The design studio. The old Forrester workshop tucked behind the main building. The one Douglas always called Dad's real office. Thomas and Hope raced across town while Carter, who hadn't spoken to either since the wedding, paused when he heard the news. It was Liam, equally furious, equally concerned, who turned to him and simply said, let's put this crap aside. The kid's missing. Without hesitation, Carter nodded. Whatever resentment he held toward Thomas or Hope, Douglas came first. By the time they reached the studio, the sun was going down. Thomas found the door unlocked. Inside, Douglas sat in the corner, arms wrapped around his knees, staring at sketches pinned to the walls. The light from the high windows cast long shadows and the silence was thick. When they called his name, he didn't flinch. When they entered, he didn't speak. He just turned his head slowly and looked straight at them. Why does everyone lie? He asked. Hope fell to her knees beside him. Douglas, we're not lying, he cut her off. Yes, you are. Everyone is. You said you were marrying Carter. Daddy said he was okay with it. Then I saw you kissing. And everyone acted like it didn't happen until I said something. Now Carter's gone. Grandpa's mad. And everyone's yelling. Again, Thomas moved closer. We're sorry, buddy. None of this should have fallen on you. Douglas blinked. You always say that, but it does. Hope touched his shoulder gently. Tell us what you need. He looked at both of them, eyes too wise for his age. I want dinner. Just us three. No yelling. No secrets. No phones. I want a dinner where the adults tell the truth. Thomas and Hope exchanged a glance. Part heartbreak, part realization, and nodded. They called Liam and Carter to tell them Douglas was safe, then took him home. Not the mansion. Not the Logan estate. Just a quiet place nearby where Thomas had kept an old loft apartment, mostly unused. Simple, quiet, private. That night they set the table themselves. Hope cooked. Thomas helped. Douglas arranged the forks meticulously, as if trying to restore order to a world that had spun out of control. They ate in silence at first. Then Douglas looked up. "Do you love Daddy?" he asked Hope directly. She froze. Her fork paused mid-air. Thomas looked down. Douglas pushed again. "Do you love him like you loved Liam? Like you said you loved Carter?" Hope opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Thomas whispered, "You don't have to." "No," Douglas interrupted. "She does." Hope looked at her son. His eyes were pleading, not for the answer he wanted, but for an answer. Any answer. "The truth. I don't know what I feel," she said slowly. "That kiss happened. And it wasn't a mistake. But it wasn't planned either. I've spent so long trying to keep everything perfect. Trying to protect you. Trying to avoid hurting anyone. That I forgot what I wanted." Douglas leaned forward. "So what do you want?" Hope shook her head. "I don't want to hurt you. Or your dad. Or Liam. But I can't keep pretending. I kissed Thomas because part of me wanted to. And I've been running from that ever since." Thomas finally spoke. "I love her. I always have. But I didn't mean for this to explode like it did. That kiss, it wasn't a trap. It was real." Douglas nodded slowly, as if processing a long equation in his head. "Then stop running," he said quietly. "Pick someone." Hope looked at him, startled. "You're the grown-up," he continued. "You keep saying you want to protect me, but I don't need you to protect me from the truth. I need you to stop lying to yourself." That was the moment it all crystallized. Hope had danced around the truth for months. She'd buried her instincts under duty, hidden her feelings behind motherhood, let everyone else define her path. But now her son, the one she swore to protect, was the one pulling her into clarity. And he was right. After dinner, Douglas fell asleep on the couch, exhausted. Thomas moved to carry him to bed, but Hope stopped him. "Wait." Thomas turned. She stepped closer. "I loved Liam," she said. "I did. And I believed in what we had. But something changed. I changed. And maybe I was scared of that. Scared that what I felt for you was just old patterns. Old mistakes. But it's not." Thomas didn't breathe. "You've changed. And so have I. That kiss, I haven't stopped thinking about it. I'm tired of pretending I don't care. I do. I care too much." He whispered. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to stop running. From you. From this." Thomas exhaled, as if he'd been holding his breath for years. But even in that joy, he stayed grounded. "We have to take this slow. For Douglas. For everything." Hope nodded. "I'm not making promises I can't keep. But I'm done lying." They stood there in the quiet, the weight of years between them. And for once, it felt still, honest, real. Outside, the press still spun theories. The family still debated blame. But inside that loft, 3 people sat down, spoke the truth, and began something new. And Douglas, asleep on the couch, smiled in his sleep.